The Velothi rescue. The dying sun of Kepler 442 cast a sickly, suffocating orange glow across the magnificent crystal cities below. Thor pressed her translucent, trembling hand against the frigid window of the council chamber and watched another transport ship fail catastrophically to rise from the launch pad.
Thick,
choking black smoke poured from its ruined engines as frantic emergency crews rushed desperately to contain the roaring flames. "That makes 17 devastating failed launches this month," said Karen, her voice like delicate wind chimes in a gentle breeze. The younger Veloth's crystalline form flickered with anxious worry patterns, small lights dancing frantically under her skin. Thor turned away from the window, her heart heavy. Her own body showed the deep blue glow of profound sadness mixed with the fierce red of unwavering determination, the prime resonance of their dying world. She carried the crushing weight of 12 million precious lives on her shoulders. "The ships are too old, too worn," she said grimly. "We built them with materials we had 50 years ago. Now we barely have enough power to keep the cities running." The Velothi had tried everything imaginable to escape their dying world. Their sun was collapsing far faster than their brilliant scientists had predicted. What should have been a gradual death over centuries was now a desperate race against time measured in mere months. Their beautiful crystal cities, once magnificently powered by stellar radiation, their bodies naturally absorbed, now struggled painfully with the weakening star. 50 years of isolation. 50 years ago, everything had been gloriously different. The Velothi were on the thrilling edge of joining the Galactic community. Their first faster-than-light ship was ready for its triumphant maiden voyage to the nearby Zephyrin systems. The whole planet had celebrated jubilantly as their finest engineers activated the revolutionary new drive system. Then, everything went catastrophically wrong. The experimental drive had malfunctioned in ways no one could have expected. Instead of opening a clean passage through space, it created a massive, devastating burst of exotic radiation that swept violently through their entire star system. The radiation wasn't harmful to the Velothi, who naturally processed such energy, but it spread outward relentlessly to neighboring systems. Within days, the Galactic Council had declared them a mortal threat to all life in the galaxy. Ships appeared at the edge of their system with a simple, brutal message: stay inside or be destroyed. No trade, no communication, no help. The Velothi were utterly alone. "Prime resonance," called another voice from across the vast chamber. Elder Z approached with the slow, careful movements of someone who had lived far too long and seen far too much. His crystal form was clouded with ancient age, but his mind remained razor-sharp. The outer sensors have detected something highly unusual. Thera felt a flickering spark of hope, quickly suppressed. Too many cruel false alarms had taught her bitter caution. "What kind of unusual?" "A ship, not Zephyrin design. It's broadcasting on old exploration frequencies." The hope grew stronger despite her efforts to control it. "Show me." They moved swiftly to the sensor station where young Mara was working frantically over the controls. Her training as a communications specialist had seemed utterly useless in their isolated world, but now those rare skills might save them all. "It's definitely not from any of the council species," Mira said, her voice tight with barely controlled excitement. "The design is unlike anything in our extensive databases, and they're not using council standard frequencies." "Could it be pirates?" Karen asked nervously. Pirates sometimes brazenly ignored council warnings if they thought there was substantial profit to be made. "No." Mira shook her head firmly, causing tiny lights to sparkle brilliantly through her crystalline hair. "Pirates don't send identification signals. This ship is actually announcing who they are." "Then who are they?" "They call themselves human." The word meant absolutely nothing to any of them. In 50 long years of isolation, they had lost track of new species joining the galactic community. The humans were as unknown to them as the Velothi were dangerous to the galaxy. "Are they responding to our desperate distress signals?" Thor asked urgently. "I think so. They've been broadcasting persistently on multiple frequencies, asking if anyone needs assistance." Thor made a decision that would change everything forever. "Answer them." "A risky contact, prime resonance." Elder Z stepped forward cautiously. "This could be a trap. The Council has sent false rescuers before." It was painfully true. Twice in the past decades, ships had approached claiming to offer help, only to turn out to be Council agents gathering intelligence or testing their defenses. But those ships had felt wrong from the beginning. This one felt fundamentally different. If it's a trap, we're dead anyway when the sun fails, Thera said firmly. If it's real, it might be our only chance. Mira nodded and opened communication channels. The response came faster than any of them expected. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel New Frontier. We received your distress signal. What is your emergency? The voice was warm and genuinely concerned, not the cold efficiency they had grown accustomed to from Council species. Thera stepped up to the communication panel. This is Prime Resonance Thera of the Velothi people. Our star is dying rapidly. We have perhaps 6 months before our world becomes completely uninhabitable. We need help evacuating 12 million people. There was a long, heavy pause. When the human voice returned, it carried a note of profound shock. You million. That's a massive operation. Stand by. We're going to need more information. Another voice joined the communication, female this time. This is Dr. Alana Brooks. Can you tell us about your atmospheric requirements and biological needs? We want to help, but we need to know how. Hope bloomed in Thor's chest like brilliant sunlight through crystal. These strangers were talking about helping, not about the quarantine or the radiation danger. Either they didn't know about the Council's severe warnings or they didn't care. Dr. Brooks, she said carefully, are you aware that the Galactic Council has declared this system strictly off-limits? Any ship that approaches us risks being destroyed. We're aware of some kind of quarantine, came the reply. Our databases show warnings about radiation contamination. Is that accurate? The Velothi looked at her advisors anxiously. How much truth could they risk? If the humans learned about the radiation and fled like all the others, this precious chance would be lost forever. Radiation exists, she said finally, but it's not what the Council claims. We can explain everything, but not over open channels. There are monitoring stations. Understood. We're going to move closer to your system. Can you guide us to a safe landing site? You're coming down to the surface? Karen asked in astonishment if you'll have us. Hard to plan an evacuation without seeing what we're working with. Thor felt something she hadn't experienced in decades. Genuine hope mixed with terror. These humans were either the bravest beings in the galaxy or complete fools. Either way, they represented the first real chance her people had for survival. Captain Morrison, she said, I must warn you again. If the Council discovers you're here, they will try to destroy your ship. You're risking your lives for people you've never met. The answer came back without hesitation. Ma'am, that's what humans do. We'll see you soon. As the communication ended, Thor stared at the display showing the approaching ship. It was smaller than she had expected for a rescue vessel, but it moved with purpose toward their dying world. What do we do now? Asked Karen. We prepare to trust strangers, Thor replied quietly. And we hope desperately they're better than the friends who abandoned us. Outside the crystal windows, their orange sun continued its slow, inexorable death. But for the first time in 50 years, the Velothi had reason to believe they might see another sunrise on a different world. First Contact Captain Jake Morrison stepped out of the transport pod and felt his breath catch sharply in his throat. The Velothi city stretched majestically before him like something from a fever dream. Towers of pure, flawless crystal rose into the orange sky, each one catching and reflecting the dying sunlight in patterns that seemed to dance and flow like living things. My God, whispered Dr. Alana Brooks beside him, awestruck. It's breathtaking. Lisa Wang, their communications officer, was already scanning the area intently with her equipment. The architecture is absolutely incredible. Each building seems precisely designed to capture and focus light energy. That's exactly what they do, said a melodious voice behind them. The humans turned to see their first Velothi person. Prime Resonance Thera approached with movements that seemed to flow like water. Her crystalline body caught the light and sent dazzling rainbow patterns across the ground. She was taller than any of them, with features that looked almost human but were clearly something far more. Welcome to our world, Thera said. Her voice had a musical quality that made the simple words sound like poetry. Thank you for coming. Morrison felt a strange emotion looking at her. Despite her alien appearance, something in her manner reminded him powerfully of his own mother during hard times. There was dignity mixed with desperate hope, strength hiding barely controlled fear. Thank you for trusting us, he replied earnestly. I'm Captain Morrison. This is Dr. Brooks and Lisa Wang. We're here to help however we can. I hope you still feel that way after you learn the truth, Thor said quietly. She led them through streets filled with Velati going about their daily lives. Children played games that involved creating intricate light patterns with their hands. Adults worked on repairs to buildings and vehicles, their bodies glowing brighter as they absorbed energy from their tools. Everyone they passed stopped to stare at the humans with curious, hopeful eyes. Your people seem surprisingly calm for a civilization facing extinction, Brooks observed. We've had 50 long years to accept our fate, Thora replied. When your ship arrived yesterday, many couldn't believe it. Some still think you're not real. The truth revealed, they entered a large building at the city's center. Inside, dozens of Velati were working at stations filled with equipment the humans had never seen before. Screens showed star charts, ship designs, and population counts. It looked like a command center preparing for war. This is our evacuation planning center, Thor explained. We've been working on escape plans for decades. The problem is we don't have enough ships or resources to save everyone. Lisa Wang studied the displays with growing amazement. These power systems are absolutely incredible. How do they work? A younger Velati named Karen stepped forward. We process radiation naturally. Our bodies convert it into usable energy. That's why we built our cities to focus starlight and why our ships run on stellar radiation. That's fascinating, Dr. Brooks said, pulling out his medical scanner. Would you mind if I ran some tests? Nothing invasive, just external scans. Karen looked to Thera, who nodded. As Brooks ran his equipment over the young Velati, his expression grew more and more surprised. This is remarkable, he muttered. Your cellular structure actually breaks down radiation and converts it to energy. But it's not just absorption. You're processing it into something else entirely. What kind of something else? Morrison asked. Brooks looked up with excitement blazing in his eyes. Captain, they're not just processing radiation, they're cleaning it, taking dangerous particles and converting them into harmless energy. Thera's light patterns shifted to deep blue. That's what we tried to tell the Council 50 years ago. Our accident didn't spread contamination. It spread radiation that we were processing and cleaning as it moved through space. You mean you were actually helping other systems? Lisa Wang asked incredulously. We tried to explain that, Karen said, her voice bitter. No one would listen. The Council had already decided we were dangerous. Morrison felt anger building in his chest. They didn't want to listen because they were afraid of what you could do. What do you mean? Thera asked. Dr. Brooks was studying his scanner readings with growing excitement. Captain, if I'm reading this correctly, the Velati could revolutionize energy production across the galaxy. They could clean up radiation from old wars, power stations, even naturally occurring cosmic radiation. That would put a lot of people out of business, Lisa Wang said quietly. Thera's light pattern shifted to surprise. You think the Council quarantined us for economic reasons? I think we need to find out, Morrison replied firmly. He turned to Lisa. Can you tap into their communication networks without being detected? Lisa Wang grinned. Captain, I can tap into anything. Give me an hour. The conspiracy uncovered. While Lisa worked on breaking into galactic communication systems, Dr. Brooks continued studying the Velati. What he discovered amazed him more with each test. The radiation they processed wasn't just harmless. It was actually beneficial to most forms of life in small doses. This is incredible, he told Morrison privately. Their natural radiation output could extend lifespans, cure certain diseases, even improve crop yields. The Council didn't quarantine them because they were dangerous. They quarantined them because they could solve problems that make certain people very rich. How rich are we talking about? Morrison asked. The Zaffiran Empire controls most energy production in the galaxy. They also dominate the medical trade. If the Velati abilities became widely known, it would destroy their monopolies overnight. Morrison felt sick. 12 million innocent people had been condemned to death to protect someone's profit margins. He was still processing this when Lisa Wang called out urgently from her station. Captain, you need to see this immediately. Morrison and Brooks joined her at the communication console. Lines of text scrolled across her screen, all in the formal language of Galactic government. I've been monitoring Council communications, Lisa explained grimly. They know we're here. Morrison's blood went cold. How? Automated monitoring stations detected our ship entering the quarantine zone. They've already dispatched a fleet to investigate. How long do we have? Maybe 72 hours before they arrive. And Captain, Lisa paused, her face grim. They're not coming to talk. The orders I intercepted mentioned sterilizing the contaminated zone and eliminating unauthorized contacts. Thera, who had been listening, seemed to dim with despair. We knew this would happen. We're sorry we've put you in danger. Morrison looked around at the Velothi working desperately on their evacuation plans. He thought about the children he'd seen playing in the streets, about the millions of lives hanging in the balance. He thought about the lies and greed that had condemned an entire species to death. Then he made the decision that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. Lisa, open a channel to Earth Command. Priority Alpha. Captain, Dr. Brooks said quietly, if we call for help, we'll be committing humanity to a course we can't take back. The Council will consider us enemies. Morrison looked at Thera, seeing the hope warring with resignation in her crystalline features. He thought about what his species stood for, about the values that had carried humanity to the stars. Then we'll be enemies of the right people, he said. Lisa, send the message. As Lisa Wang began transmitting humanity's first act of defiance against galactic authority, Thor felt something she hadn't experienced in decades. These strange beings from a world she'd never heard of were willing to risk everything to save her people. Not for profit, not for power, but simply because it was the right thing to do. The message went out across space, carrying with it humanity's declaration that some things mattered more than politics. In 72 hours, the galaxy would learn what humans were truly capable of when they decided to take a stand. Outside the crystal towers, the dying sun continued its slow fade toward darkness. But inside the evacuation center, hope blazed brighter than any star as two species began planning the impossible together. The fleet assemble's Admiral Patricia Hayes stood in the command center of Earth Station 1, staring at the message that had just arrived from Captain Morrison. The words seemed to burn themselves into her mind as she read them for the third time. Million lives at stake. Galactic Council conspiracy confirmed. Zephyrin fleet approaching. Request immediate assistance. Around her, the command center buzzed with frantic activity as staff officers tried desperately to make sense of what Morrison was asking. A full-scale evacuation of an alien species that the galaxy considered dangerous. A direct confrontation with the most powerful empire in known space. The end of humanity's carefully built relationships with the galactic community. Admiral, said Commander Richard Cross, the Council liaison officer assigned to Earth. His face was deathly pale with worry. You cannot seriously be considering this madness. If we interfere with the Velothi quarantine, the Council will expel humanity from all galactic organizations. We'll be outcasts ourselves. Hayes looked at the data Morrison had sent along with his urgent request. Dr. Brooks's scans showed crystal clear evidence that the Velothi posed no danger to anyone. In fact, they could help solve problems that plagued dozens of species across the galaxy. The medical applications alone could save billions of lives. Commander Cross, she said quietly, her voice like steel. How long have you known the quarantine was fake? Cross's face went even paler. Admiral, I don't know what you... The radiation readings, the medical data, the economic reports about Zephyrin energy monopolies. Either you're completely incompetent at your job, or you've been helping cover up genocide for 50 years. Cross opened his mouth to protest, but Hayes held up her hand for silence. She had made her decision. Send immediate orders to Admiral Ryan Mitchell aboard the Endeavour. He is to assemble the largest humanitarian fleet in human history. Every available transport ship, every medical vessel, every supply carrier. If we're going to save 12 million people, we'll need everything we have. Admiral, please reconsider, Cross pleaded. The political consequences will be severe. Humanity has worked so hard to gain acceptance in the galactic community. Hayes turned to face him directly, her eyes blazing. Commander, what good is acceptance by people who commit genocide for profit? If that's the kind of community we've joined, then maybe it's time to leave. The greatest fleet within hours, ships began gathering at the staging area near Jupiter. The Endeavour, humanity's largest exploration vessel, served as the flagship for the rescue fleet. Captain Ryan Mitchell worked frantically with his staff to coordinate the massive operation. How many ships do we have? Mitchell asked his operations officer. So far, sir. More arriving every hour. Transport capacity for about 8 million people if we pack them tight. Not enough. We need ships for 12 million. Dr. Elizabeth Stone, the fleet's chief medical officer, looked up from her preparations. Captain, we don't even know if we can safely transport the Velothi. They process radiation naturally. Our ships might not provide the right environment. We'll figure it out when we get there, Mitchell replied firmly. Right now, speed matters more than perfect planning. Engineer Tony Rivera was working on the same problem from a different angle. I've been studying the data Captain Morrison sent. The Velothi ships use radiation-powered systems. If we can modify our power grids to work with their technology, we might be able to transport more people safely. The fleet continued to grow as more ships arrived from human colonies throughout the solar system. Cargo haulers, passenger liners, even private yachts joined the rescue effort. Every ship that could carry people volunteered for the mission. Back on the Velothi homeworld, Morrison watched his long-range sensors with growing worry. The Zephyrin fleet was only 18 hours away, and it was far larger than he had expected. 12 heavy cruisers and a command battleship, more than enough firepower to obliterate every ship in the system. Captain, Lisa Wang called from her station. I'm picking up new contacts on the edge of the system. Multiple ships approaching fast. Morrison felt his heart skip. Zephyrians? No, sir. The energy signatures are all wrong. These ships are... Lisa paused, checking her readings again. Captain, these are human ships. Lots of them. On the main screen, dots of light began appearing as the rescue fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel. One ship, then 10, then dozens, then hundreds. The largest fleet humanity had ever assembled was arriving to save people they had never met. Farah stood beside Morrison, her crystalline form blazing with patterns of amazement and gratitude. So many ships, she whispered. Your people came. They actually came. We told you we would, Morrison replied simply. Captain Mitchell's voice came over the communication system. Morrison, this is the rescue fleet. We're here to get your people out. What's the situation? Zephyrin fleet 18 hours out, Morrison reported. 12 million people need evacuation. Their sun is failing fast, understood. We're beginning landing operations immediately. Dr. Stone will coordinate medical support. Rivera will handle technical modifications. We've got this, Captain. The evacuation begins. The next few hours were controlled chaos. Human landing craft descended to the crystal cities while Velothi families gathered their few precious possessions. Dr. Stone's medical teams quickly discovered that the Velothi could indeed survive in human ships, and their radiation processing actually improved the health of human crew members who worked closely with them. Rivera found that Velothi, technology and human engineering, complemented each other perfectly. The radiation-powered systems could enhance human ships far beyond their normal capabilities. Working together, the two species could accomplish things neither could manage alone. As the evacuation progressed, more alien species began to take notice. The Coran Trade Federation, longtime rivals of the Zephyrin Empire, sent supply convoys that happened to arrive just as human ships needed food and medicine. The Nexus Science Collective began broadcasting the real data about Velothi radiation processing to anyone who would listen. Admiral, reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Bell from the Endeavor's communication station. We're receiving messages of support from dozens of species. The Aquatic Collective has formally condemned the quarantine. The Democratic Worlds Alliance is demanding a full investigation of Council actions. Mitchell felt a surge of hope. Maybe humanity wasn't as alone in this as they had thought. Maybe other species were tired of Zephyrin domination too. But their hope was tempered by the approaching threat. Long-range sensors showed the Zephyrin fleet still approaching at maximum speed. Fleet Commander Vixak had a reputation for ruthless efficiency. He would not hesitate to destroy human ships to maintain the quarantine. Captain Morrison, Mitchell called over the communication system. How much longer do you need? At least 12 more hours to evacuate everyone, Morrison replied. The Velothi are helping as much as they can, but we're still moving too slowly. Then we'll buy you those 12 hours, Mitchell said grimly. As the Zephyrin fleet approached the edge of the system, human warships moved to intercept them. The rescue transports continued their work, racing against time to save as many lives as possible. Thor watched from the command center as her people boarded human ships. Children who had never seen anything but crystal cities were stepping into metal corridors. Elders who remembered the time before the quarantine were finally leaving their prison world. Why are your people doing this? She asked Morrison. You barely know us. You're risking everything for strangers. Morrison looked at her, thinking about how to explain something that seemed obvious to every human in the fleet. Because you needed help, he said finally. That's what people do for each other. The Zephyran fleet was now only 6 hours away. The evacuation was far from complete, and somewhere in the space between the dying sun and the approaching warships, the future of galactic civilization was about to be decided. The Battle of Kepler. 442 Fleet Commander Vixak stared at the tactical display with cold fury burning in his reptilian eyes. The human rescue fleet was far larger than intelligence reports had suggested. Hundreds of ships swarmed around the Velothi homeworld like insects protecting their nest. "Sir," reported his tactical officer, "the humans have positioned their warships between us and the planet. They're not moving to intercept our approach. They're protecting the evacuation." Vixak growled deep in his throat. "Foolish mammals. They think their pathetic fleet can stand against the might of the Zephyran Empire." He opened a communication channel to the human fleet. "Human vessels. This is Fleet Commander Vixak of the Zephyran Imperial Navy. You are in direct violation of Galactic Council quarantine orders. Withdraw immediately or face destruction." Captain Mitchell's response came back strong and clear. "Commander Vixak, this is Admiral Mitchell of the Human Rescue Fleet. We are conducting humanitarian operations to save innocent lives. We will not withdraw." Vixak sneered at the human's presumption in claiming such a rank. "You are interfering with official council business. The contaminated zone must be sterilized. Stand down now and you will be allowed to leave." "The only contamination here is the lies you've been spreading for 50 years, Mitchell replied. "We have proof that the Velothi pose no danger to anyone. In fact, they can help heal the galaxy." Vixak's claws dug into his command chair. The humans knew too much. His orders from the Zephyran High Command were crystal clear. No witnesses, no survivors, no evidence left behind. The secret of Velothi abilities had to be buried forever. "You have 10 minutes to withdraw," he transmitted coldly. "After that, we will consider you hostile forces and act accordingly." The communication ended. Around the Velothi system, two fleets faced each other across the void. The Zephyran ships were fewer in number, but carried massive weapons designed for ship-to-ship combat. The human vessels were mostly converted civilian ships with minimal armor and defensive systems. On the planet below, the evacuation continued frantically. Dr. Stone worked with Velothi healers to move the sick and elderly first. Engineer Rivera helped modify human ships to better accommodate families. Every minute counted as more people were lifted to safety. "How many more?" Morrison asked Thera as they watched another transport lift off from the Crystal City. "About 4 million still need evacuation," she replied, her light pattern showing deep worry. "At this rate, we need at least 8 more hours." Morrison looked at his tactical display. The Zephyran fleet was forming attack formations. 8 hours might as well be 8 years. We'll get them out, he promised. "All of them." Opening shots high above, Admiral Mitchell studied his own displays. His warships were outnumbered and outgunned, but they had advantages the Zephyrians didn't expect. Human ships were smaller and more maneuverable. Their crews were fighting for something they believed in, not just following orders. "All ships, this is Mitchell," he broadcast to his fleet. "Remember, we're not here to win a war. We're here to buy time for the evacuation. Keep the Zephyrians busy and protect the transports at all costs." The 10-minute deadline passed in tense silence. Then, Vixak's flagship opened fire. The first salvo targeted a human medical ship that was approaching the planet. The energy beam struck the vessel's shields and overloaded them instantly. The ship began to break apart, its hull glowing red-hot. "Medical ship hit," reported Mitchell's tactical officer. "They're losing life support." Before Mitchell could respond, something unexpected happened. 3 Velothi ships that had been hiding behind the planet suddenly appeared, their crystal hulls blazing with collected starlight. They positioned themselves between the damaged medical ship and the Zephyran fleet. "This is Elder Z aboard the defense ship Resonance," came a new voice over the communication system. "We will not allow harm to come to those who risk their lives for us." The Velothi ships opened fire with weapons that no one had seen in 50 years. Beams of pure, concentrated radiation struck the nearest Zephyran cruiser. The energy, that would have been deadly to most species, was absorbed and processed by Velothi technology, then redirected as devastating attacks. "Impossible," Vixak snarled. Their weapons should have decayed decades ago. His tactical officer was studying sensor readings with growing alarm. "Sir, their energy output is off the charts. Those ships are powered by the dying star itself. They're drawing energy directly from stellar radiation. The battle erupted across the system. Human ships darted between the larger Zephyran vessels, using hit-and-run tactics to avoid their heavy weapons. Velothi ships provided cover with their energy shields and devastating radiation beams, but the numbers were still against them. 3 human destroyers were destroyed in the first hour of fighting. A Zephyran cruiser took heavy damage from combined human and Velothi fire, but remained operational. The medical ship that started the battle was saved by heroic damage control teams, but dozens of rescue workers died in the effort. The truth spreads down on the planet. Morrison watched the battle through his ship's sensors while coordinating the evacuation. Every explosion in space meant friends dying to save people they had never met before yesterday. "Captain," Lisa Wang called urgently, "I'm detecting massive power buildup in Commander Vixak's flagship. I think he's preparing to fire on the planet itself." Morrison felt ice in his veins. If Vixak fired planet-killer weapons at the surface, millions of Velothi would die instantly. The evacuation would become meaningless. "Broadcast this on all frequencies," he ordered Lisa. "Emergency message to all galactic media networks." Lisa nodded and opened channels across known space. Morrison took a deep breath and began speaking. "Attention to the galaxy. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel New Frontier. I am broadcasting from the Velothi homeworld where Zephyran forces are preparing to commit genocide against 12 million innocent people." He paused, letting the words sink in across thousands of worlds. "For 50 years, the Galactic Council has lied about the danger these people represent. We have proof that the Velothi can help heal radiation damage across the galaxy, but the Zephyran Empire has kept them quarantined to protect their own profits." He looked at Thor, who stood beside him. Her people were dying in space to protect humans they barely knew. The least he could do was make sure the galaxy knew the truth. The Velothi process radiation naturally. They could clean up the damage from old wars, provide clean energy, and cure diseases that have plagued us for centuries. Instead, they've been condemned to die alone because their abilities threaten corporate profits. Morrison transmitted Dr. Brooks's medical data, the intercepted communications about the conspiracy, and live footage of the battle raging above. The information spread across galactic networks faster than the Zephyrans could jam it. Right now, Zephyran ships are preparing to destroy this world, and everyone on it to hide their crimes. If you're watching this, know that the Galactic Council has been lying to you. The Velothi aren't dangerous. They're the victims of the most heinous cover-up in galactic history. The response was immediate and explosive. On dozens of worlds, protests erupted against Zephyran rule. The Democratic Worlds Alliance formally withdrew from the Galactic Council. 3 Zephyran colonies declared independence and sent ships to join the rescue fleet. But high above the Velothi home world, Vixak was beyond caring about politics. His orders were to eliminate all evidence of the conspiracy, and he intended to follow them regardless of consequences. "Target the planet's major cities," he ordered coldly. "Prepare to fire." The massive guns of his flagship began to track toward the crystal cities below, where millions of Velothi still waited for evacuation. In minutes, they would all be dead, and the secret of their abilities would die with them, unless someone stopped him first. The resonance. The massive guns of Vixak's flagship began their deadly turn toward the cities below. In the crystal towers, millions of Velothi people looked up at the sky, knowing death was coming. Parents held their children close. Elders whispered prayers to stars that would soon be silent. But Captain Mitchell was not finished fighting. "All ships, emergency maneuver Alpha." He broadcast to his fleet, his voice ringing with absolute determination. "Ramming speed on the flagship. We stop him here or we stop him nowhere." Every human warship in the system turned toward Vixak's massive battleship. They were smaller, weaker, and vastly outnumbered. But they had something the Zephyrans didn't understand. They had something worth dying for. The human ships accelerated toward certain death. Their crews knew most of them wouldn't survive the next few minutes, but those minutes would give the evacuation ships time to save more lives. Vixak watched the approaching human vessels with contempt. "Fools. Do they think their tiny ships can damage us?" His tactical officer was studying the sensor readings with growing concern. "Sir, they're not targeting our weapons or engines. They're all aiming for the same section of hull." "What section?" "The power core, sir." "If enough of them hit the same spot." Vixak's eyes widened as he understood what the humans were planning. They weren't trying to defeat his ship. They were trying to make it explode. All weapons, target those ships. Stop them. The Zephyran fleet opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams and missile barrages tore through space. 3 human destroyers vanished in blinding balls of fire. A cruiser broke apart as its engines overloaded, but the rest kept coming. The power of unity down on the planet. Thera watched the human ships rushing toward their doom. Her people's natural ability to sense radiation let her feel the approaching death in space. Brave beings she had known for less than 2 days were about to die to save her world. "We have to help them," she said to Morrison, her voice urgent. "Your ships are already fighting," Morrison replied, "not just the ships, all of us." They returned to the evacuation center where hundreds of her people were coordinating the rescue efforts. "My people," she called out, her voice carrying the authority of absolute leadership. "The humans need our help. They're dying to save us. We must give them everything we have." Elder Z understood immediately. "You mean the resonance?" "Yes, every Velati in the system together." Morrison watched in awe as every crystal being in the room began to glow. The light wasn't random anymore. It pulsed in perfect rhythm, creating patterns that seemed to reach out through space itself. "What are they doing?" he asked, mesmerized. "Something we haven't tried in 50 years, Thor replied. "We're linking our radiation processing abilities, all of us as one." Across the planet, 12 million Velothi joined the resonance. Their combined light blazed so brilliantly that human ships had to adjust their screens. The dying star above seemed to respond, flaring with renewed energy. In space, the human fleet was seconds away from impact when something incredible happened. Every human ship suddenly blazed with the same light as the cities below. Their hulls, their weapons, their shields, everything began glowing with processed stellar radiation. "What's happening to our ships?" Mitchell's tactical officer called out in amazement. "The Velothi are sharing their power with us," Mitchell realized, his voice filled with wonder. "They're making us stronger." The human ships struck Vixak's flagship like hammers hitting an anvil. But instead of being destroyed on impact, their Velothi-enhanced hulls cut through the enemy armor like it was paper. Massive explosions rippled along the battleship's side as the smaller vessels punched holes straight through to the power core. Vixak felt his ship shuddering violently around him. Damage reports flooded in from every section. The humans had done the impossible. Their sacrifice had been turned into victory by alien generosity. "Sir, we're losing power," his tactical officer reported frantically. "The core is destabilizing." "Emergency evacuation," Vixak ordered through gritted teeth. "Signal the fleet to withdraw." But his fleet was already breaking apart. The other human ships, enhanced by Velothi power, were tearing through Zephyran formations like wolves among sheep. Cruisers that had seemed invincible minutes before were limping away with catastrophic damage. The galaxy watches, more importantly, the galaxy was watching. Morrison's broadcast had reached every inhabited world. The truth about the Velothi, proof of Zephyran crimes, the sight of humans dying to save an innocent species, all of it was being transmitted across known space. On the Zephyran homeworld, massive protests erupted in the capital city. Citizens who had believed the government's lies for 50 years now saw the brutal reality. Their empire had condemned millions to death for profit. The Coran Trade Federation formally declared war on the Zephyran Empire. The Aquatic Collective announced they were withdrawing from all treaties with Zephyran worlds. Even some Zephyran colonies joined the rebellion, sending their own ships to help with the evacuation. But the most important change was happening in the space around the Velothi homeworld. As Vixak's damaged fleet limped away in disgrace, new ships began arriving. Not Zephyran ships, but vessels from dozens of different species. "This is Captain Torx of the Coran heavy cruiser Windstorm," came a transmission. "We're here to assist with evacuation operations." "This is the Nexus Science Ship Discovery," called another voice. "We have medical facilities and transport capacity for 5,000 people." Ship after ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Species that had been silent about Zephyran oppression for decades were finally taking a stand. The rescue of the Velothi had become a powerful symbol of resistance across the galaxy. Admiral Mitchell, his flagship badly damaged but still operational, coordinated the expanded rescue effort. With so many ships helping, the evacuation proceeded far faster than anyone had thought possible. Dr. Stone worked with alien medical teams to treat both human and Velothi wounded. The cooperation between species was unprecedented. Beings who had never met before worked together as if they had been allies for years. Engineer Rivera made another discovery that would change everything. "Captain," he reported to Morrison, his voice trembling with excitement, "the Velothi enhancement of human ships isn't temporary. The radiation processing created permanent improvements to hull strength, weapon power, and engine efficiency." Morrison looked at him in disbelief. "You're saying this technology could revolutionize space travel for everyone," Rivera continued. "Ships enhanced by Velothi processing could travel faster, farther, and safer than anything we've ever built." Morrison looked at Thera, who was helping coordinate the final stages of evacuation. "What do your people think about sharing this technology?" "We've been alone for 50 years, she replied, her light patterns showing warm contentment. "Sharing our abilities with friends sounds wonderful." Victory and new beginnings. As the last Zephyran ships disappeared into faster-than-light travel, the rescue fleet celebrated their hard-won victory. Human and Velothi crew members embraced. Alien species that had been enemies for centuries worked side by side. The galaxy was changing, one act of courage at a time. Over the next several days, the evacuation continued with breathtaking efficiency. Ships from hundreds of worlds contributed to the effort. The Velothi who had been abandoned by the galaxy were now being saved by it. Thor stood on the bridge of the new frontier, watching her home world fade in the distance. The dying orange sun cast its last light over the crystal cities they were leaving behind. It was beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. "Thank you," she said to Morrison, her voice thick with emotion. "You saved us." "All of us," Morrison shook his head. "We saved each other. Your people's gift made the difference in the battle. Without the resonance, we would have failed." "Then we're even," Thera said with a smile that made her entire body shimmer with light. "Not even close," Morrison replied. "You're going to help us build something better. A galaxy where people help each other instead of exploiting each other." Behind them, the evacuation fleet stretched across space like a river of hope. 12 million lives saved by the courage of strangers who became friends. 6 months later, New Haven. The last Velothi transport ship landed on New Haven, a world in human space that had volunteered to share its home. The planet's unique radiation environment made it perfect for Velothi settlement, while human cities provided a place where both species could work together. Admiral Hayes stood with Prime Resonance Thera on the observation deck of New Haven Station, watching human and Velothi children play together in the lush gardens below. The sight would have been impossible to imagine a year ago. "The Galactic Council wants to negotiate," Hayes reported. "The Zephyran Empire has collapsed. 36 species have asked to join our alliance." "What do you call this alliance?" Thera asked. Hayes smiled. "The Independent Species Coalition, built on the principle that no one gets left behind." Down in the gardens, a human child was teaching a young Velothi how to throw a ball, while a Velothi adult showed human engineers how to make their tools glow with processed starlight. The future was being built one friendship at a time. "You know," Thera said thoughtfully, "for 50 years we thought we were cursed. Our accident, the quarantine, the dying sun, it all seemed like punishment. And now?" Hayes asked. "Now I think it was preparation. We were meant to meet humanity, two species who needed each other to become what we were meant to be." Hayes looked at her curiously. "What's that?" Thera's light patterns shifted to brilliant gold, the color of hope and joy. "Better." Epilogue. A new dawn. 3 years after the rescue, the Independent Species Coalition had grown to include over 100 worlds. The Zephyran Empire had been dissolved, its former territories now free democracies. The corrupt elements of the Galactic Council had been removed, replaced by leaders who believed in cooperation rather than exploitation. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the same observation deck, now promoted to Admiral and Commander of the Coalition's exploratory fleet. Beside him stood Thera, now the Coalition's Ambassador of Unity. Below them, a magnificent sight unfolded. A new type of ship was being christened, a joint human-Velothi design that combined the best of both technologies. It was faster, stronger, and more efficient than any vessel before it. More importantly, it was a symbol of what different species could accomplish together. "The New Frontier 2, Morrison said, reading the name painted on the hull. "I'm honored." "You earned it," Thera replied. "That first voyage changed everything. You could have turned back when you learned about the quarantine. You could have abandoned us when the Zephyrans arrived, but you didn't. That's what humans do. Morrison said simply. No, Thera corrected gently. That's what good people do, human, Velothi, or otherwise. You taught the galaxy that. On the viewing screen, the new Frontier 2 fired its engines for the first time. The ship moved with impossible grace, its Velothi-enhanced systems gleaming with power. It was heading out to explore new worlds, to find other species who might need help, to spread the message that had changed the galaxy. No one gets left behind. Morrison thought about that day 3 years ago, when he'd first received the Velothi distress signal. He thought about the decision to risk everything for people he'd never met. At the time, it had seemed like the only choice. Looking back now, he knew it was the best choice. Admiral, called his communications officer. We're receiving a distress signal from the Andromeda sector. Unknown species, dying sun, requesting evacuation assistance. Morrison and Thera exchanged knowing looks. How many people? Morrison asked. Their message says approximately 8 million. Morrison smiled. Tell them we're on our way, and contact the Coalition fleet. It sounds like we're going to need help. As the orders went out and ships began assembling for another impossible rescue, Morrison looked at Thera. She was glowing with that brilliant gold light again. Another adventure? She asked. Another chance to do the right thing, Morrison replied. They walked together toward the command center, where 100 different species worked side by side. The galaxy had learned an important lesson, one that had been burned into history by the courage of humans and the gratitude of the Velothi. The most powerful force in the universe isn't weapons or wealth or political influence. Sometimes it's simply the willingness to help someone in need, no matter what the cost. The willing to stand up and say, we're coming. Hold on. The willingness to risk everything for strangers who might become friends. And the unshakable belief that every life matters, whether you've known them for decades or only just heard their voice across the void of space. As the new Frontier 2 disappeared into the stars, carrying hope to another dying world, the words of the Coalition's founding charter glowed on screens across 1,000 worlds. We stand together. We help each other. We leave no one behind. This is our promise, our purpose, our future. This is who we choose to be. And in the gardens of New Haven, where crystal towers caught the light of a yellow sun and human children played with Velothi friends, the future they had built together blazed brighter than any star.